I'm Jo Abbey from 9honey.com.au, and it's my delight to be here to launch Lifeline's podcast, Holding On to Hope. We're also live streaming today's launch, so hello to everyone from around the world and the country who's watching this live stream right now. You can share it on your socials if you think anyone would enjoy listening to this and introducing them to the podcast. It's lifeline.org.au/live stream. What better place to launch a podcast than in this space? It's designed to help save lives by bringing conversations about suicide out of the shadows. The Ethics Centre, what a beautiful space, what an extraordinary location. I'm so glad to be here today. It's a place where all those difficult conversations happen to achieve the best possible outcomes for everyone. Before we begin, just a little bit of housekeeping. In the event of an emergency, the fire stairs are located out the back door to your right-hand side, and the bathrooms are through the back door, through the glass doors on your left-hand side. I'd like to begin today's proceedings by inviting Yvonne Weldon to welcome us to country.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, sisters and brothers. As was said, my name is Yvonne Weldon. I am a Wiradjuri woman from Cowra here in New South Wales. I'm from the waters of the Clare, also known as the Lachlan, and of the Murrumbidgee Rivers. I'm the elected chairperson of the Metropolitan Local Aboriginal Land Council, who are the cultural authority under the Aboriginal Land Rights Act for the land we're meeting on. I would like to pay my respects to all elders past and present, and to all First Nations and non-First Nations people here today. It is always a humbling privilege to provide a welcome to country. For me, it is a profound honour and a luxury of time. Time given by you and time of the many warriors that started the traditions for all of us. A welcome isn't just words, it is a reflection of where we are. Not this modern day structure, but the continuous link of life, lessons, purpose and nurturing supplies. The boundaries of the traditional owners are not defined by the hand or by the pen, but through the natural landscapes of the earth. The Eora Nations country covers the Hawkesbury River in the north, the Nepean in the west, and the Georges River in the south. On behalf of the Metropolitan Local Aboriginal Land Council, the elders and the members, I welcome everyone to the land of the Gadigal, acknowledge the Gadigal people whose spirits and ancestors will always remain with this land, our Mother Earth. Across this beautiful continent of ours, there are hundreds of nations, tribes and clans which have existed here for over 60,000 years. Our songlines are embedded into our DNA from the land and the waterways. The land and the waterways are our life. Without it, our health, our languages, our animals, cultures, ecosystems, our people and our nations will be diminished. We don't exist in isolation of the land, spirit and body. We are one. We have all been affected by many things in our life that we don't understand, and we haven't yet got the answers to our questions. And to pay homage, could you all please pause for a moment to remember the many sacrifices that have been made along the way, the ones we will continue to make, and the ones we shouldn't have to. Please reflect about those that we have lost, the ones we continue to help, and so many that don't yet realise they may need your support. Also you that give so much of yourselves at your own expense. Let's spare a thought for the families, the friends and the communities, and what we should do as a community of people gathered here today. As you connect, learn and share, today, tomorrow and beyond, know that everyone's social and emotional well-being is more important than the material things in this world. Remember asking the simple questions of, are you all right? How are you? And can I help? Is an important step for you and the person you are asking. If you don't ask, you may never realise the meaning of what it is to receive the answer. No matter what walks of life we come from, all of us need to support each other, bringing out hidden heartaches to share and bringing us all strength together. The road travelled alone is the longest, hardest road there is. Don't do it on your own. I will join you and you can join me. All of us together can bring about a positive change and hope to each other, now and into the future. To make that future possible, let us all draw upon my people's spirits as we continue on our journey. May my people's spirits walk with you and guide you as we strive forward for us all. Again, on behalf of the Metropolitan Local Aboriginal Land Council, welcome to Gadigal land. Always was, always will be Aboriginal land. Thank you and have a wonderful day.
Thank you so much, Yvonne, for that lovely welcome. It was just so beautiful. I'd like to take some time now to acknowledge all of the lived experience that is in this room. And I'm part of that, my son is part of that, we're all part of that. We're all here sharing stories. You know, we ask the question, how are you? And part of the healing and the sharing of our lived experience is answering those questions as honestly as we can. I have a friend who now, his thing is to ask me how I am 3 times. He'll go, how are you? How are you? How are you? And it's the third answer that he always listens to, and it takes 3 for me to give him a real answer. But it's by responding to people who genuinely care about us in an honest way that helps these conversations continue. To all the lived experience in this room, I send you love, I send you light. You know who to call if you need to speak to anybody during and after this event. And that's also why social media is so important. When we share things like this on social media, we never know who's going to see it in that moment in time when they need it, or maybe they know somebody who needs Lifeline in that moment in time. So if you get a chance today, if you take any photos or share any links on your socials, please use the hashtag #HoldingOnToHope and tag LifelineAUS. That would be absolutely perfect. Now, I'm quite happy now to introduce our keynote speaker today, returning the favour. He's done it for me a couple of times. John Brogden and his wife Lucy have become very important to me. I don't think you realise how important you have become to me, but he's important to so many people through all of his incredible work. John is the chairman of Lifeline Australia. He's served voluntarily for Lifeline for over 9 years. In his other life, John is also the Chief Executive Officer of Landcom, Chairman of Furlong House Retirement Village, patron of Kookaburra Kids, and a member of Bilgola and Avalon Beach Surf Lifesaving Clubs. How do you have time to be here? Goodness. John was also the member for Pittwater in the New South Wales Parliament and Leader of the Opposition from 2002 to 2005. John, a very, very warm welcome.
Joe, thank you very much for that, Joe. Is Yvonne still here? Yvonne? You meant to give a welcome to country. You can't steal the show. I thought we could have finished when you spoke. It was beautiful. Thank you very much. Like many of us, we attend events where we're welcomed, and I have to say that was the most significant welcome I've ever received. So thank you again very much for that. And thank you, Joe. Joe's become a friend of mine and of Lucy's and of Lifeline in recent years. She lives a wonderful life, does enormously great work, but as she said, has a son who is very unwell regularly, and she keeps smiling. I don't know how you do it, but we're always with you through those difficult times. Amongst our very special guests, I do want to acknowledge one of my colleagues on the Lifeline Australian board, Reverend Jeff. Thank you for coming. And our not so new as you used to be CEO, Colin. Thank you for being here, Colin Seary. Colin, you know, when you hire a new person, they get a 3-month trial period. I think he's trying us out. We're not trying him out. So, Colin, it's great to have you. And a very special welcome to all of you who are here today in this wonderful building. I've lived and worked in Sydney my entire life. I didn't know this building existed, so it's wonderful to see it being used for these wonderful purposes, and we thank the Ethics Centre for hosting us today. It's my pleasure to launch the Holding On to Hope podcast series for Lifeline Australia today. I know the importance and power in telling these stories. For over 10 years now, and through my connection with Lifeline, I've been sharing my own story. In that time, I've had countless people stop me in the street or at Lifeline events. It's a deep privilege to hear that my story of survival helped them give hope. I'd also say, on a personal note, that I find that story, in one sense, easier to tell, but I'm never absented from the physical and the mental challenge in giving that story and in telling that story. I walk away pleased to have had the opportunity to share, but also quite exhausted from having to do it. Strangely, physically exhausted as much as emotionally exhausted. Now, research has shown that through sharing stories of lived experience, we can best demonstrate that for most, not for all, but for most, time passes and pain ends. This is why we needed to do this series. These stories powerfully demonstrate that there are alternatives to suicide. Tragically, in Australia, in the last reporting period of 2017 to 18, the ABS figures show that there were 3,128 suicides. The hardest part about those numbers, for those of us who work and commit ourselves to suicide prevention and to a zero suicide target for Australia, is that there was a 9% increase in those figures in the year before. Indeed, the ABS releases a rather dreary set of statistics every year called the causes of death in Australia. And with the exception of lifestyle diseases like diabetes that are going up, every other death is going down. Every other cause of death is going down except suicide and lifestyle diseases. And suicide went up an extraordinary 9%, the largest year-on-year increase that the ABS has ever seen in suicide numbers. And of course, all of those lives are a son, a daughter, a husband, a wife, a friend, a lover. And none of them go without great sadness. Furthermore, on average, our nation sees 80,000 attempts each year. That's a lot of people in tremendous pain and a lot of families that are shattered. It both astounds and saddens me that despite the fact that nearly everyone in Australia knows someone who's taken or attempted to take their own life, we rarely talk about the stories of survival, the stories that give hope. There is still a stigma here. Through holding on hope, we want to bring suicide out of the shadows and acknowledge those touched by suicide. Fundamental to all we do at Lifeline is connection. We know that it is through connection that we find hope. This podcast series explores the importance of that connection and how it leads to survival. To Bev and John, our co-creators from Yahoo Creative, where are you? I'm going to take a punt that you're Bev and he's John. And John's behind the camera working, so thank you very much for all of your belief in this project and the power that you put into it. What I love about this series is that the stories are told by those who took the journey and lead their listeners along the journey to hope. You have honoured the stories of those involved beautifully. You've ensured that every episode is a demonstration of how the world is a better place with them in it. To our participants, those of you with us today and those watching online, thank you. Your determination to ensure no person feels they have to face their darkest moment alone is truly admirable. It cannot have been easy for you and those who journeyed with you to revisit these dark times. We admire your courage and self-awareness, and we thank you for sharing your deeply personal insights. They're a wonderful gift. Thank you very much. We at Lifeline are proud of this series because we know your incredible stories help us save lives. By listening to Holding On to Hope, it is our hope that those who feel alone and in a dark place will feel less alone and more encouraged to connect with someone they can trust or to contact Lifeline. We hope these stories will help those contemplating suicide realise that there is always a way through the darkness and that there is hope. You know, I often reflect on the fact that when the Lifeline number is attached to the bottom of a story, whether it's print media or electronic media or social media, sometimes it's not even described what Lifeline's there for, which is good. It means people know what we're there to do. Sometimes it's there for those who are in crisis, it might say, or for those who need help. What I'd like it to say is that for those who need hope, we can give you help and hope to get through these difficult times. I sometimes think that the message is too neutral or even too negative, and we need to connect what we do to a message of hope, that there is a way through this. I wrote an article a little while ago and said we want people to choose life over death. We're not making a moral judgment. There's no moral or religious judgment, but if you have the choice between life and death, choose life. In doing so, I apologise to Wham, and half the people I know under 30 had no idea what I was talking about. So I felt very old. So I do think we need to, and what we're doing here today sends a message of hope, that there is a way through, that we do want you to be alive, that is a better choice than being dead, and that there's something to live for, and there's hope that there are people who will see you through that. And I know that message won't hit home with everybody, but for those who do, that's another life saved, and that's what we're here to do today. To Dish, Fran, Barbara, Cherie, Christine, Ali and Megan, or Megan, maybe everyone's called Megan now after, what's her name? And the other supporters discussed but not named, they're all an inspiration. They emphasise the importance of looking out for each other and encourage listeners to recognise the inbuilt capacity we all have to support those around us. I thank you all for sharing so openly and urge all Australians to listen to Holding On to Hope. You'll be able to find Holding On to Hope at lifeline.org.au/podcast or wherever you get your favourite podcasts. Please tell your friends and your social networks. Leave a review and subscribe. There are already new episodes in the pipeline. I hope that you, as I have, gain much from listening to these podcasts. Thank you.
Thank you so much, John. That was so amazing. And thank you so much for being so generous with your story. I know exactly what you mean when you say it can be draining to share your story, but it's also so important to do. And I love hearing about the message of hope as well. I think of the things I say to my son. He's had a terrible couple of weeks. Hope is so subjective. You know, what gives one person hope doesn't give the next person. My son wants to be, oh gosh, he'll kill me if I get it wrong, an astrophysicist, I think, and he wants to colonise Mars. So when he's not well, I'm like, you can't do anything because you'll never get to colonise Mars. And I see a little spark in his eyes. Like he doesn't know whether to laugh or what. But I'm pretty sure I'm saying the right thing to him at the moment. So that message of hope is what we're here to share today. And the stories are incredible. I was listening to a couple of episodes on the way in this morning. I listened to Tanya's story and Cameron's story and just learned so much from each of them. They're so unique, not only their issues and their specific struggles, but also how they came to find a solution, what worked for them, the chance meetings that led them to find some sort of semblance of wellness, whatever that looks like, whatever it is. We're going to play a video for you now just to give you a bit of a taster of all of these incredible episodes. You probably are like me, you'll jump around and listen to as many of them as you can. So let's have a look at this video now, and this is the Holding On to Hope series.
Holding On to Hope is a new podcast from Lifeline Australia in which people who've come through the darkness of suicidality share the connection that gave them hope. At Lifeline, the connection we make with people who are experiencing emotional distress is fundamental to all we do. We know it's what provides the hope to continue living, but we also understand that reaching out for help is not as easy as it sounds. By choosing to share these stories as podcasts, we hope to make it easy for people to safely hear the experience of others.
I was, I suppose, a high-level ultra-endurance athlete around the world, had done race after race, year after year. Eventually, a bad race led to a heart condition that sort of stopped and paused that racing at the time. That obviously led to a whole series of events that culminated in an attempt at taking my own life probably 3 years ago. I lost both parents within the space of probably under 6 months. I had a marriage that was falling apart, all sorts of stress going on around me, and looked at the only solution was to finish it. In my position, I was saved by a really close friend who down the track now has become my partner. And that blesses me every day.
had this perfect storm of all the wrong things sort of not going right in my life. You know, it all sort of came to a head and became too much one day, and I just, you know, I had that small window where everything aligns and your brain tells you that it's the right thing to do. I was just, sitting there contemplating everything, and I was lucky that when I picked up the phone that day to call my best friend, that he answered.
In the telling of these incredible stories, we also aim to inspire a more compassionate society, an Australia where every person realises their inbuilt capacity to be supportive of those around them. The stories on Holding On to Hope are some of the most important conversations you will ever hear.
I wanted to jump on this podcast because I want this stigma of suicide to go away. I hope everyone listens to it. No two stories are ever going to be the same. And I think at the end of the day, we need to realise that there are better options.
Just incredible. It really is incredible. I mean, we keep talking about the stigma, and there's so much work to do when it comes to stigma. I watch a lot of trash TV on Hey You, and I was watching a random episode of one of those silly shows this morning, and there was this scene where this man pulled a friend aside and said to him, "Look, I'm here for you if you need me. I don't want you to, make a bad choice. I know everything's going wrong for you now." And the friend is shown later in an aside going, "Why did he say that to me? That's so silly, as if I'd ever do anything like that." It just made me realise how ingrained the stigma is. The fact his friend reached out to him, and made that connection. It's so incredibly important. The conversation around mental illness and suicide needs to change urgently, and this podcast is going to go a very long way to helping that happen. So I'm sure you're as happy as I am to be here and part of the launch today. I'm now delighted to introduce you to Beverly Hadcraft from Wahoo Creative. She and John Worrell, they co-created this series with Lifeline Australia, and for anyone who's listened to any of the episodes, it is extraordinarily produced. It is so wonderful to hear these stories told so honestly, so safely and responsibly, and they're just beautiful stories and beautiful sharing. Beverly Hadcraft is an awarded journalist who started her journalism career in daily newspapers. She worked her way up to editor in some of the nation's top-selling supplements and magazines. In 2005, Bev branched out in partnership with John to create Wahoo Creative. And throughout the creation of the Holding On to Hope podcast, the most important focus for Lifeline has been on the safety of those who choose to share their story and their families. There's been a lot of responsibility in the creation of this podcast. Bev was approached to do work on Holding On to Hope by Lifeline Australia because of her unique ability to uphold the dignity of the individual in the sharing of their story. While John has brought his creative sound engineering talents to help bring the listener on the journey. Over to you, Bev, to introduce our amazing panellists.
We're going to put everybody on stage. Up you go. Amazing panellists. Where's Pete? Where did I sit? I've got a tissue here that Jodie kind of... You've already met Pete briefly here on the film, so I'll introduce you to everybody else. This is Tanya. Tanya has had a long and difficult struggle with the complicated illness that is anorexia. She now uses her experiences to help other people. This is Ben. He's a former soldier and CEO. He spent many years trying to get his PTSD diagnosed after seeing service in East Timor. This is Brendan, who has come from Broken Hill. He's a farmer, and he talks about his struggles with rural isolation and all the other issues that farmers face, especially at the moment when we're dealing with drought. And this is Dave, who's come from Melbourne, and he has spent many years dealing with chronic pain and depression. So I'm going to start. Pete, I know you're quite keen to answer this question. You've already gone over your story a little bit and introduced us to yourself. I should tell you actually that John and Pete are trying to get onto Gogglebox together. They practice. They practice. That's one of the ways they cheer one another up. So Pete, it must have been difficult to share this. I know it was difficult to share this story because it was. I think we all cried quite a lot in the recording. So what motivated you to do it? What motivated you to be involved with this podcast series?
I think it's I think all five of us are unique stories. If someone from sport sees my story, reaches out, then that makes a massive difference. I think, to compare my story to these guys is, I look at it and go, it's not like, I can run, I can swim, I can ride a bike, but I suppose surviving what other people survive, it's very minute what what I can put myself through. Whereas these guys are, it's a livelihood and survival of, I suppose, what's the word? These guys rely on their livelihood. Mine's, relying on a pair of shoes and a cap and goggles and a bike. I just think, I think if my story saves those people that are obviously sport orientated, and we've seen a lot of sports, it's such a tragic issue now in sport. Like you can go from the top of the top to, having to sit back and live a normal life, which people struggle with. And I did, I went from, without being arrogant, races around the world that you would not even think about, if you're a sane person, to, to having to step back into reality, which a lot of people can't do. And I think that's, the crux of what can happen in this world.
You're quite right. A lot of sports people we know do struggle terribly once they have to give up their sport.
Yeah, 100%.
Themselves. So Dave, I know you've done some amazing work, and you not only now speak to those who are struggling themselves, but also to those who want to help those who are struggling and want to be of assistance to them in the professional sphere. So what do you think about the current reluctance to discuss mental health and suicide and the stigma around that? And how do you think that affects the safety of those like you who are in pain?
Look, there's I guess there's still a really significant problem with stigma when it comes to presenting a barrier to help seeking. I was thinking back to a conversation I had with my uncle who passed away last week, and we discussed this for some time about the idea that thinking back to when I was 18 or 19, we didn't have the internet, we didn't have Google to sort of look up things and understand about mental illness and about suffering, or even where to go for help. I guess one of the benefits of the internet is that information is really widely available. So I was trying to say, look, stigma is a lot better. He said, no, it's just not as bad. Just trying to say that there's a difference between being okay and being not as bad as it was. And I think it's not as bad as it was. But what do we know about stigma? It stops people from asking for help. People are ashamed. People feel they're alone. People feel like no one will understand me. And about the only thing we know about how to prevent stigma is to spread the word, to talk about it, to educate people and demystify things, bring it out of the shadows, get people to talk to one another and share their experience, and they'll be surprised just how many people also say, look, it's exactly how I felt. I've been there, or my sister's been there, my brother's been there, my son's been there. It's just, I'm sure everyone knows someone who has contemplated or thought about ending their life in some really dark times. But the more we talk about it, the more we bring it out of the shadows and talk to one another, the more I think the stigma will go away.
I think what was interesting with you as well is that you did that in quite innocuous ways, like with your film club, and so it's totally non-threatening. People could come along and talk if they wanted, but just be with other people. Do you think those sorts of things are important?
Absolutely, that sense of connection to other people. I mean, I think, talking about the internet, I guess, I think about social media. It's such a wonderful tool and platform as part of someone's life. But for those who are already isolated or from excluded communities, it's almost like it's a substitute for connection. It makes you feel like you've got connection without actually having connection. So in some ways, for people who are in isolated situations, for whatever reason, I think it gives you this illusion that you're connected to people when you're not. So having someone that you can reach out to and talk when times are hard, or even just when times are good and you just need a catch-up, is a vital part of staying alive and feeling like you've got something to live for.
Ben, your story is again quite extraordinary. You've had a lot of amazing things that have happened to you that have helped you get back into life, ranging from being at Invictus, which was huge, but also, just being ordinary and accepting that you could be ordinary, which is a difficult thing for somebody like you, I'm sure. But how generally do you think the Holding On to Hope podcasts will help people? And I'm thinking not only those who are struggling, but those who are attempting to help people who are struggling, and maybe those who are just, starting to slide down that dark path.
Look, this podcast series has been possibly the most important and impactful collaboration I've done in my life. Sitting here with these guys after hearing their stories makes me feel connected like brothers and sisters the rest of my life. And it's these stories which reach deep into your soul in a way that, like humans have done for centuries, sitting around a fire, side by side in the darkness, sharing each other's stories. This podcast is like that flame, where we sit with people in the darkness. We share our experiences and say, yeah, life can be tough, but it's a team sport. We're in this together. We help each other through it. And, there are people around that have been there some way, different positions along the path. Reach out, because life can be wonderful. This is, like John was saying, less about, to me, talking about impact of suicide, and more a celebration of life. Because once you get through that darkness, there's so much to live for.
Brendan, would you add anything to that? I know that you've been really... Is it working?
Is it working? This doesn't work in my pocket, and this doesn't work. It's all right. Absolutely, I'd agree with it. Look, I think once you push through that dark space, which you actually don't know it's coming upon you. This is the problem with what we're living through at the moment. You get to a point of no return. But that point can take 10 years to get to. So once you get to that point, and then you take that first step and realise that you're in a situation where you're in a bit of strife, or someone notices it, and you take that first step, and I always talk about this first step, you take that first step to get help. That instant decision that you make to get that first step, to make that first step, is automatic relief. Because you've taken the burden off your shoulder, regardless of the information that you get back by clinical experts, you're already on the right track to recovery. Because you've been overburdened with an enormous amount of information which you cannot get rid of in your head. So once you've done that, you're on the way to recovery. The most important things in this podcast is, two things for me, is I'm able to share it to people that I think may need it, or just share it in general. And secondly, live through other people's hardships and just see what they've been through. And to recognise that there's a hell of a lot of us out there in the same boat. Enormous amount. Can't be understated. So yeah, absolutely, the podcast is enormous. It's huge.
And Tanya, do you have any advice in particular for listeners or would-be listeners of these podcasts? How would you, who do you think would benefit from them, and how would you advise them to approach listening to it? Because there is such a lot of accumulated wisdom from all of you. I was talking to someone earlier, and I said it's sort of like you could go to a psychologist and they'll teach you how to swim, but listening to these podcasts and your accumulated wisdom, it's like you're taught how to cope with big surf and how to not panic when you're in a rip, and also how to admit when you're struggling as well. So what would you say to those who are listening, and how would you advise people to get on board and listen?
I think the podcasts are for anyone, for everyone, for those who are experiencing hardship in their life, illness in their life, despair in their life. to find a way to reach out and a safe way to reach out. That's a way in which you can listen to the vulnerability and the courage of another so that you can inspire and understand that you have that vulnerability and that courage within yourself. I think if you're supporting someone who is struggling with suicide, with mental illness, with life, to listen to these stories, to understand the incredible impact that we can all have on another person by simply sitting beside, not necessarily speaking or doing anything, by calling someone, by inviting them out, by continuing to engage with them. The immense impact that we have is remarkable. And I think as a listener, as someone who has the capacity to support another, the ways in which our support people share the ways in which they've done that, that's beautiful insights that we glean. I would encourage people to listen with someone. That these podcasts, through their vulnerability, through the way in which we talk each about our connections, they're to inspire and be an impetus for connection. And if you can listen with someone beside you, not only are you protecting your safety if you are feeling vulnerable and unsafe, but you're providing then something in which to start a connection about. I think I know that sometimes when I'm sitting in dark spaces, when I'm hearing others' dark spaces, that not only does that sometimes pull me a little bit further into darkness, but then eventually pull me out. That I know that if that's too much for my heart and too much for my head, that I need to go to my hands and to my senses to keep me safe. And I would offer that these stories, that if you're listening to these stories, don't just listen for the darkness. Listen for the light and the hope, the courage, the incredible, remarkable humans that are inspired from this darkness, that evolve from this darkness, and listen for that. Because I think that is what is the most pertinent information that emerges. It's not where we've sat and where we've struggled, but how we've moved from there, that we can help to pull each other from there too.
I think you're very right there. There's one of the common themes in all these podcasts is how much kindness is shown by many of these people, the interviewees' friends and supporters. And I think if nothing else, people will walk away from listening to them, and it's a reminder that you can never be too kind. And in fact, one of the interviewees actually finishes his podcast. He's had the most awful journey, and he finishes by saying the thing that keeps him going is that there's always going to be an act of kindness around the corner. And I think you can never underestimate how that might affect people, just to go out of your way to be a little bit kind. Pete, did you want to say anything else about how you think, if any advice you'd give to listeners of these podcasts?
No, I'm just concerned you've got 4 motivational speakers and good old me sitting down here like...
But they're never going to be on Gogglebox.
Don't worry. I don't know, how were you trying to, what would you...
So would you have any advice for listeners? You had 2 particularly amazing supporters, you know.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
You couldn't speak about either of them in that podcast without becoming undone.
No, that's right.
And, you know, do we all need more people like John and Jess in our lives?
John, concerned. Jess, yes.
Oh.
But I think the thing that comes out of it is there's always a positive. I knew someone would win. Mine... Can I write it down?
You can say it. Do you want me to go to the next one?
No. Mine brought all my mates back together, I must say. Yep, 100%, without fail. There was a gap in time, but now you see it.
Yeah, your mates were really huge.
Yeah, 100%, yep. Yeah.
Good on you. So I just just want, several of you have had personal experiences with Lifeline in particular, and so can you tell us a little bit about that experience and how it helped you?
Yeah, well, for me, I reached a point in my life where I didn't know where to turn. Was standing literally at a crossroads in town and completed a questionnaire on the Beyond Blue website that showed that I was off the scale. Didn't really know what to do with that. It was a Sunday, couldn't get in touch with my GP. I just followed the bouncing ball down to call 13, 11, 14 on the bottom. I thought, oh well, why would I call that? You know, nothing's wrong with me. And picked up the phone, my iPhone 2, whatever it was, dialed the number with my big chunky fingers, and lovely woman picked up. And I said, look, I don't really know why I'm calling. She said, that's all right, Nick. That's normally how the conversation begins. I know live streaming, but I lost my shit at the time and just fell down. And that woman, God bless her, whoever she is, set into course a chain of events which ended up saving my life. That's why I'm so proud to be back here as a Lifeline ambassador today.
Tanya, did you want to say anything?
Oh, my experience with Lifeline. I have been a frequent caller to Lifeline and have experienced chronic suicidality for a large portion of my life. And when I get into those places where my self-worth plummets to the floor, where I feel as though I'm a burden to everyone and it's too hard to reach out to those that are closest to me and dearest to me, then Lifeline has been that point of safety where I can reach out to essentially a compassionate stranger, where I make the connection that can provide the encouragement to do that in other areas of my life. And for me, there's the moments where I've just sobbed on the other end of the line and haven't been able to say a thing, but just had somebody say, it's okay, you don't have to say anything, I'm here and I'm listening. And sometimes just fetal position on the floor in that call is the time that I need to breathe, the time that I need to bring my emotions back into a place where I can then start to use the front of my brain and make some different decisions. The pause, sometimes the strategist. I don't know about everybody else, but talking about suicide is hard. And talking about suicide with those that I love is even harder because they go, oh God. And that's fine, and I appreciate that that's the response, but that makes it hard to have those conversations. And when I can talk openly about what I'm thinking, what I'm feeling, why I want to make that decision, it brings it out from this dark and scary place where that's contained into a place where we can open it up, we can look at it, we can dig at it deeper and actually see that what I'm wanting, that maybe the death that I'm wanting isn't what I want. Maybe it's something else that I'm wanting from this moment. And that's what the Lifeline, that's what the call, that's what that space that some beautiful, remarkable stranger provides. And that's an incredible gift that is provided by Lifeline.
Dave?
Look, I think back to when I was in that really dark space, and I remember thinking to myself that I just wanted the pain I was in to stop. The physical, the emotional, just the incredible, overwhelming feelings that I was having, I just wanted it all to stop. And thinking, I guess, looking back at that now, I can see, I guess, that it wasn't so much that I wanted to die as that I didn't want to live with the pain I was in. And something that Lifeline helped me see, I guess, when calling, is that what I was thinking about doing was a permanent solution to a temporary problem. It might help me, but it would hurt many, many other people if I were to act on those feelings. And it's, what I was going through at that particular moment where I was really having this urge to act wasn't going to last forever. That idea that, if I can get through this right now, that I will feel better, and just by talking you start to feel better. It's an incredible feeling when you're feeling so dark and so alone and so punished and squished by all this incredible feeling, to feel like you can actually reach out to someone and that burden starts to lift. As you said before, it's just by starting that conversation, you feel like that burden's starting to lift from you. It's incredible.
Brendan, I know you've become an ambassador as well for Lifeline, and how have you found you're helping other people as well as helping yourself through Lifeline?
Yeah, well, for a start, I love Lifeline. I think Lifeline is an amazing organisation. I remember the day when I just walked straight up. I was in Broken Hill and I was just suffering internally, and I walked straight up the steps into the Broken Hill Hospital because I didn't know whether I could go to anyone else. And then I walked out of there, and then I was able to tell my story because there was a relief. I fell into Lifeline a little bit by default because I did a talk through How's Your Mate campaign, which is run by the AFL in Broken Hill. And I was asked to come on as an ambassador. Through that process, I've met some of the most amazing, quirkiest people in my life. Me being one of them, believe me. And I love the office in Broken Hill, the Lifeline office. But what it did for me, it gave me the opportunity to give back to people. That's what it gave me, because the stigma that it's attached to mental health, suicide, is quite enormous. And I can't necessarily speak for what goes on in the city, but I know what goes on in the country. And it would be much the same, I would have thought. Rural is shocking for holding things close to your chest and boiling things over. Things just boil over and people take their lives. If I can make a difference, and the people around me, these guys can make a difference, this type of thing will make a massive difference. I think Lifeline is an extraordinary organisation, and we should just pump it and give it as much money as we possibly can.
Thank you very much to all our panel. So I think you'll agree they've been pretty amazing and very open, as you'll hear when you listen to the podcast. I just want to thank one more person, which is our Media and Communications Manager at Lifeline, Ina Mullen. Normally, media and communications people promote other people's work, but this has been very much Ina's idea. She came up with it, she talked to me about it last December. And as all the journalists in this room will know, we're very reluctant to talk about suicide. We're so worried and frightened of triggering further suicides. But it's, she showed me the statistics and we were going, we cannot not talk about this. We have to do something to bring it out of the shadows. And Ina has actually driven this from the beginning, and she's helped find people. She's guided us, she's made sure everybody's safe and okay. And I know she thinks it's one of her proudest achievements. And having worked with Ina in not-for-profit for a long time, I know that's a big call. So thank you, Ina.
Thank you so much, Bev. Thank you so much to our incredible panellists. Another round of applause for the generosity with which they've shared their stories. Colin, would you like to come up? We've got a little token of our appreciation, and don't dash off because our panellists are happy to chat to everyone here today. If you'd like to have a conversation, your work is not done. We have some sustenance for you as well. The importance of sharing stories is absolutely incredible, and I wish that every media organisation who includes Lifeline's number at the end of stories will give back and support the incredible work of this amazing organisation. Thank you so much, everybody. You guys are amazing. So don't forget to share a link to this on your socials or send it to anyone you think will benefit from listening to these amazing podcasts. The hashtag is Holding On To Hope. Tag Lifeline Australia as well. Please stay with us. The formalities are over, but we are looking forward to meeting every single one of you. Thank you so much.